Welcome to the Trailblazers Experience podcast. I'm your host, Ntola. I'm looking forward to having amazing conversations celebrating women in business, entrepreneurs, STEM, and creatives. If you are enjoying this podcast, please follow, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I'm looking forward to hearing about what you thought about the conversations that we'll be having, what you thought about our guests, and any tips that you may have from your own experiences. On that note, let's get into the podcast. I'm so excited to have our guest, Sara Russell, on the Trailblazers Experience podcast. And for those of you who don't know, this is something in terms of following up, just being consistent and disciplined. This is our second time recording this because we had technical issues before. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you very much for having me.
So let's start off with a bit of a quick fire, just so people can get to know who you are and sort of relax into the episode before we get started into the session. So tell me, beach or mountains?
I do love the sea. I always, one of my holiday requirements is that I can smell the sea. But there is something about a mountain, a walk up a mountain. I did the 3 peaks with my husband before kids, and the views were incredible. So I think if I can't have both, I'll choose mountain.
I totally disagree. I love the beach. I've tried mountains before, and I've just realized maybe it's an age thing or my eyesight's failing. I notice that I'm scared of heights. Or maybe it's this fear of falling and injuring myself that just makes me not want to have anything to do with mountains. But when I get to the top, it's all fine. It's just that whole thing of climbing it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, if you put it like that, I don't want to climb up the bloody thing, but I'd like to look at the views when I get there. So if someone can, and if there's like a nice wine bar on top of Ben Nevis or something, that would be lovely.
That is a very good incentive, for sure. Are you a morning or an evening person?
Weekends, I tend to be a morning person, but I think during the week, mornings tend to be a rush to either get out the door, do school run, get to work. So I would say during the week, I'm far more productive at night.
I think I'm a morning person. Just that whole idea of setting tasks, being productive, getting them out the way. And then obviously I notice that as the evening then comes, I sort of have a peak phase, need to rest. And then I can be productive in the evening, but maybe it's something to do with just silence, having time to think, having time to process my thoughts, but definitely morning person.
I enjoy doing my to-do list in the evenings for the next day because my mornings are always such a manic rush to like get shoes on a 3-year-old and whatever. If I can just get to work and I've already done my to-do list and I'm like winning.
That's actually a very good tip, actually. Put your to-do list together in the evening so you know what you're looking to work and tackle the next day. Are you podcast or book?
That's a toughie.
What's that? Yes.
Because I am an absolute bookworm. I love reading. But with all the running and stuff that I do, I'm much better listening to podcasts than actually listening to music or anything. Oh, I'm going to go 50-50 on that. You can't make me choose those ones. Sorry.
What if it's Audible, audiobook? Does that count?
Yes, I do listen to Audible, but there's something about a book. Like I love going to the library. I love picking a random book that I've never heard of by an author I've got no idea who it is, and just seeing whether it's any good, really.
I think so. I totally agree. I'm old school, just wanting to discover a new novel, a new book, just knowledge, gaining knowledge, but discovering it, sitting down, taking the time away from digital. But then again, on the other hand, I always think, well, digital is there for a reason, isn't it? So to make our lives easier. So if I can actually read a book using an audiobook instead, then I'll take that. Otherwise, I probably won't have any time to read.
Absolutely. You've got to fit it in when you can.
For sure. What's the last gig you went to?
It was my cousin took me to go see Robbie Williams because she's about 10 years older than me, maybe a bit more actually, but Don't tell her I said that. And when I was younger, she used to. I used to be obsessed with Take That and Robbie. You know, I definitely felt like I was married to Robbie Williams. So she bought me these tickets. And obviously, as an adult, like I've not really followed his music much or anything. But he was brilliant. He was really good. He was a right good old entertainer. He looks great. Looks very healthy. Always glad. And then before that, I saw The Killers with my friend. We went to see The Killers, which was amazing.
There's something to be said about boy bands. I keep saying bring boy bands back. I know that there are lots of Korean groups out there, but bring the classic boy band. I don't care what country you're from, just bring them back. It's just that whole atmosphere of dancing, eye candy, etc. So I see where you're coming from. Something to look at and listen to.
Is it called K-pop? Is
Yes.
that what it's? Because that has completely passed me by. This whole frenzy. I mean, I know I'm completely the wrong audience. We don't need to remind everyone how old I am, but I mean, it's just completely passed me by. I mean, I remember doing all the dance routines to the to Boyzone and Take That and NSYNC and stuff. I mean, those were the days.
Yeah, there's sort of, so K-pop, or even if you go to China, travel there for work, they've taken all these genres that we've sort of forgotten about, you know, and parked all these artists and just have turned it into one phenomenon. It's crazy out there. What's your everyday style?
Definitely, I would say classic. I wouldn't call myself trendy or fashionable. But I like a clean look, classic look, and obviously comfortable and practical.
Casual chic, maybe?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I like a dress up now and again, but when it comes to day to day, you know, I'm all about the boots or the trainers and and keeping it nice and cash, I think.
I totally agree. There's something about comfort and feeling confident within yourself and what you're wearing. And that just emulates in what you say. When you enter the room, just based on how you're dressed, how you're feeling, you have to have that confidence from within. Obviously be presentable. Not shocking people when you enter a room. But yeah, that's casual chic is sort of the direction I'm going in as well.
I think so. I think that whole confidence from within thing, I've definitely, you know, since having kids and when your body changes and things like that, you do like the clothes you used to wear just don't look the same anymore if you can even get them on. But it's you're right to feel it's got to come from within and having, you know, being very sure of what your style is and not trying to emulate anything or anyone else.
Definitely. So talking about Quickfire, so that was it. You did really well, Sarah. I feel like I know you a little bit more.
What do I get? A prize? I don't know.
I think it's the prize is that you're showing women out there that it's okay to be vulnerable and just be your authentic self. That's the prize.
Oh, I'll take that then.
Now, getting into the interview. So I did a bit of digging because I think it's important for the audience to know who you are. Sara Russell, a qualified journalist and digital marketing specialist, marketing director, and founder of the Women's Domain, which we're going to talk about. Several years experience building relationships between businesses and customers. Now, that's an amazing resume from my perspective. Talk to me about how you came to be in this position, this role, because I think a lot of things that I've seen with young people in the industry is sort of navigating when they finish university or before they go to university. What should I be? What should I study? How do I, grow my career into this role? Talk us through or talk me through how this journey began for you.
So everything from a marketing perspective, everything that I know now, I have learned on the job. So I graduated Bournemouth University in multimedia journalism, and I came out of there thinking I loved elements of the course. Brilliant, it was an excellent course, but I knew that although I love writing and I think I will always want to be a writer, I'm not a reporter. I'm not a news reporter. So I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. But I did know I wanted to go traveling. So I had a year or two of saving money, working at whatever job, trying to save up, having fun in my 20s with my mates in Coventry. Then I disappeared to Australia, came back after a year. And I think we're in the middle of a recession. familiar, credit crunch, and those promises that you always get when you go to university. If you do this course and you graduate with a 2-1, which I did, you'll go straight into a job that's 20 grand a year, and it's this, that, and the other. And of course, that didn't really happen because A, it's such a competitive industry. B, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And no one was paying 20 grand to a sort of 21-year-old kind of thing. That just wasn't happening. So I kind of had a bit of a think about where I wanted to end up, and I was looking at jobs, and a role came up at a publishing house in Leamington Spa, and it was publishing assistant, and it was essentially a business that published numerous niche magazines in the kind of country sports industry, ran some clay shooting competitions, etc. And I came in very much in a junior role, supporting the management team, and just, I wouldn't say dog's body, but and it was very hands-on. But I had two great managers, James and Ruth, who let me drive a lot, So when they were showing me how things worked, I was like, no, can I drive? Can I sit there? Can you just watch me, make sure I don't make any mistakes? And they were just fabulous mentors like that. And it got to the point where it was like, I found that there was a gap in the kind of the marketing of the business, with like the subscription marketing for the magazines. And I thought, I could do that. And I think I kind of basically sort of, I don't know who, I must have said it to the boss, but it was like, I want to do the marketing. Let me be in charge of that. Let me be in charge of subscriptions. So I went from publishing assistant to marketing manager, I think in about a year. And, having a little team of people, doing all the subscription marketing and the admin and general office kind of management as well. But there was very much a drive from me to just go, where am I most useful? Like, how can I show the value that I've got? Because I'm not a one-trick pony, right? I love the commercial side of stuff. I love the office management side of stuff. I love the marketing side of stuff, everything. I love event management. And I thought, well, this is how I can get that experience. And as the business grew, we did music magazines and music shows and bigger events, and it was just the best experience. And then I decided that I was going to be brave and start my own kind of marketing and events business.
So there's some a learning there in terms of the previous role that you had about learning on the job, learning by doing, being curious, and just, open to learning different things in different departments, especially in the early days of your career, because those skills will carry you through wherever you go.
100%. And I think it's, I never wanted to ever pigeonhole myself into a particular niche. And, you have people who are product marketers or content marketers or paid marketing, specialists. And I can see the benefit of becoming an expert in a particular field. But my personality is very much one that is just, I like to have reach into everything, fingers in all the pies, as you will.
Yeah, that cross-functional knowledge.
Yeah, and because it's experience and it's fun, it keeps things interesting, and you get to work with so many different minds, all the different people you get to work with. It's awesome.
I also feel that marketing is constantly evolving, especially with the onset of digital. It's one of those things where in 10 years, we're talking now about AI, NFTs, metaverse. 20 years ago, we wouldn't even have been thinking about that. So you mentioned, you left that job and then started your own business, you said?
I was getting married to my wonderful husband, and I was then going to go freelance, and I had some work lined up locally, and I was just going to sort of build my business from there. But what happened was a month after we got married, and just before I left my job, my father passed away quite unexpectedly. So that was a huge knock, I think. But also what made the freelance world a bit difficult was because I was going into the world of real tennis, which was a big part of my dad's life. So imagine you've just got married, this big life event, you're entering this like new world of freelance and self-employment, and you've just lost your dad, and then everyone you speak to that in your new place of work almost constantly is wanting to talk about your dad. So it just became, and I just mentally I don't know, I've got things like laryngitis. I've never had laryngitis before. I was run down. I wasn't, and then I got pregnant with my first baby and we were having a house extension at the time as well. So this is all like that. A lot came at me really quickly. And I just got to the latter stages of my pregnancy and I thought, I can't do this. I can't build this business, and obviously money's an issue, etc. So I made the decision then that once my son was born, I would start looking for a new role. But of course, after that experience, my confidence went from like up here and sort of plummeted to the floor. And I started looking for work, like marketing roles, but I was definitely looking and applying for jobs that were, I think in retrospect, below my pay grade, but what I needed, I think, at the time.
Yeah, and life events are one of those things that sort of change your perspective and change the gear and direction that you needed to go. So condolences on the passing of his father. I had a similar experience. My mom passed away 15 years ago, and it was just at the point where I was at a career pivotal point of my career where I could have progressed in the organization where I was, but my mother had passed away. I had to go back home and deal with that, and came back and got pregnant because I was a good child. I had to navigate through that as well. And that, honestly, I look back at it now, if I hadn't made a different direction or pivot in my career, probably wouldn't be where I am now. So life has an interesting way of pointing you in the right direction.
Absolutely. And I think, no regrets, right? Because you have to make the decisions at the time based on the information you have and listening to what's in here and what's up there. And there are lots of times you have to make a sacrifice, but I think it always leads you to where you're meant to be,
So fast forward, how did you get into this role that you're in now? Obviously, marketing director for a digital marketing agency. That's a big step.
Well, yeah, Digital Ecommerce Marketing Agency. So I've known Rupert Cross and Richard Peachy, who are the owners of 5874 Commerce. I've known them for well over 10 years. They were suppliers when I worked at the publishing house, and they're great guys and we got on really well. And actually when I was freelancing, I freelanced a little bit for them as well. And I was in my current role, and it was lockdown had happened. It was kind of talk about how we're going to get back to the office and all of this, and I was bored. I wasn't doing anything that I deemed to be worthwhile. I think because it was a very successful business in fintech, but marketing wasn't really a priority. So no one really understood what I was capable of. I don't think they cared what I was capable of. I was there to perform a very simple function, and they were very kind, and they did show that they valued me in the ways that they could. But in that role, I knew that I wanted to do more. I wanted to, loads more. And so I think I was talking to Rupert at some point, and he kind of mentioned there was a marketing director role, and to have a look on the website and have a conversation. So about 20 seconds after reading the role, I called him up and I said, "You're going to give me this role." He was like,
"Mara, it's mine. I need this. I was
like, "Don't get too cocky. You'll have to have an interview." So he took me to Costa in Leamington. And we just had he knew, the thing is, I knew Rupert, I knew what his values were, I knew what his overall, wants for the business were, and how he dealt with people. So for me, I knew that culturally it was a fit. I'd never worked in an agency before. I'm not classically that person who's drawn to agencies, that kind of 8 till 10 kind of working and burnout kind of thing. I'm a mum of 2, and but I could offer something that potentially 5/8 hadn't had before, primarily a female leader on the leadership team, and just maybe a little different way of thinking, not necessarily just to do the fact that I'm a woman, although I do think that helps, but just with my background, I come from a very different way of working to some extent. And so I was offered the role of marketing director, and my role there really was to position 5/8 in the marketplace as the agency it really is, because it had grown so quickly over COVID, to the point where it just needed to catch up with itself. The talent we had, the projects we were doing were extraordinary, but no one really understood what we did or who we were. And I knew that there was something I could offer from a marketing perspective, which was always a bit different, a bit outside the box. And I think a lot of that comes from this kind of purpose-driven marketing, which is what I'm drawn to. And that's kind of how the women's domain was created, because I knew that I wanted to do something a bit different.
So for the audience out there, talk to me about how you add value. You talked about you knew that this role was made for you in terms of the culture, the values. What is it you bring to this role? So if I was to say, oh, I want to be a marketing director in your organization, not that I want to be, but what are the skill set that you think you're bringing that is adding value to this organization?
So I'm a career-driven mum of two, right? So I'm coming into this position in a leadership position. So take the marketing aside for a moment. I take the fact that I'm a people manager very seriously. I care about people. I want people to thrive. So you look at this kind of agency culture, and this wasn't just of 5/8. And conversations Rupert and I have had, him saying, we need to move away from this stereotypical agency culture. This isn't healthy. Work-life balance is really important. So then I was looking, and we had meetings as leadership teams, and things like, we changed from a 40-hour week to a 37.5-hour week, because it wasn't going to affect people's productivity. It made no real impact to the bottom line, but what it would do is it would potentially attract working parents who needed to do school runs, because if they had to do a 40-hour week, how are they going to do school runs? Of course we offer flexibility, of course we offer hybrid and work from home, work from the office, etc. But it's little things like that, better benefits, etc., more holiday, whatever. That it didn't all just come from me, but I think me being in the room and reminding people that working parents and also potentially and mothers coming back into the workplace, etc., we offer something that you've not had in a while. So attract us, make it desirable for us. So that's one element, I think. And I think from a marketing perspective, what I offer is that I don't, because I did learn on the job, right? I don't have a marketing qualification. Well, I do have a marketing qualification, but I didn't go to university for marketing. I don't have lots of letters after my name or anything like that. All I think about is how I can connect with people. So technology is great. I love it. I love digital transformation. I love what we can do for businesses. But when I'm marketing, when I'm putting content together, I'm talking to people. E-commerce directors and e-commerce managers, but I'm talking to people who care about women's rights. I'm talking to people that care about the environment. I'm talking to people that, care about stuff that isn't just necessarily in their day-to-day, but if they see it, it attracts them. And then we can start having a conversation that's a bit more authentic than just, let us transform your business. Everyone says that.
That is so true. There's something to be said. There's some takeaways there that I've heard about, implementing. So first, not just implementing. So firstly, having a diverse and inclusive workforce is important to the success of any business. You sort of looked at the people, the structure, and brought in processes and efficiencies that are sort of helping the agency thrive, and the people around you, the talent that you've been able to bring in. I think that is amazing and really important. So let's talk about the women's domain. What is the women's domain and how did that come about, Sarah?
The women's domain, we launched it last year on International Women's Day because me and my team, my wonderful team, we knew that we wanted to mark the occasion, but we also knew we didn't want to do the same thing we've always done, and we'll hold our hands up and say we've done it before. You take a picture of all the women at the company you work at and you put the IWD logo on it and it's hashtag diversity matters and aren't we an inclusive workforce? Look at all these great women that are in our workforce. Brilliant. And then the next day you talk about something completely different and it's, the digital fish and chip paper basically, isn't it? So we then started asking questions like, all right, so let's look at 5/8. We have one woman in leadership. We had one female web developer. At the time, we didn't have any women in project management. We didn't have any women in solutions or anything like that. And then we started looking out to the wider industry, and we started looking, panel discussions that were all white men around the similar age, all that kind of stuff. In fact, Rupert did actually kind of inspire it a little bit as well, because he was invited to talk on a panel, and it was him, two other blokes, and a woman from the industry, and the woman had to drop out, so they replaced her with another man. And Rupert sort of messaged me and he said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be the same. I don't want to look the same as everyone else in this panel, because that's not how I want to represent myself. This isn't how I want 5/8 to be represented. Do you think I should pull out? And I was like, yeah, I think that's a great thing to do. You don't need to make a big song and dance about it. You don't need to, well, hey, look at me, aren't I brilliant? I've pulled out of a panel discussion. But what it did is that it ignited that conversation within 5/8 about what else can we do. So with all that, it's like, okay, so we want to launch something on International Women's Day where we're coming at it very much from a position of, we don't have the answers. We're not the experts. We know that we want to be part of the positive change in the industry as individuals and as a business, but we don't know how to do that yet, or not authentically anyway. So we basically committed to a 12-month marketing and research campaign where we would go off and talk to individuals within the industry, mainly women, about their experiences, about their perspectives, and amplify their voices, and talk about, well, what change do they want to see, and where do they see things happening that's really good, and where do they see things happening that isn't so good, and how we then can produce something at the end of this 12 months, like a white paper, that we can deliver to the industry that gives businesses in our industry a bit of key insight and takeaway into, all right, if you really want to make your workplace an inclusive environment for women, because we're specifically looking at women, here are some really easy things you can do, and you can do that tomorrow. And actually, if we all did it as an industry, then we could really make a difference, and then it just will hopefully snowball. And we're coming up to the 12 months now, and I'm really excited. The white paper, I mean, Michelle, who is my content manager, she is writing her little socks off on this. Like she's doing a job. And I mean, I think I'm going to buy a massive bottle of wine when it's done. But this is a real labour of love, and we're really excited to launch it on International Women's Day this year. And the support and the feedback we're getting from just all the other bits of content we're doing has been incredible.
That is such an amazing story. And just for the audience out there who don't know what a white paper is, what is a white paper?
If you work in the government, it's probably slightly more hefty. It's really, a white paper is essentially a piece of research content, and in our world, content marketing, where we've gone away and we've surveyed and we've interviewed and we've pulled together key insights, and we deliver it into what it's now digital. Obviously, we're not save the trees and all that, and we send that out. So it's essentially a piece of research that we've done as a company.
And it's amazing just what you said about taking International Women's Day and turning it into a movement that is being the change you want to see. It's so inspiring. I've attended one of your events of bringing women from different areas, all of the sector, whether they're junior execs, whether they're directors, whether they're account managers, and giving them the space, to see people who look like them, have, intimate conversations about work-life balance, things they can improve. I've connected with a few of them, and they've also made their own connection. It's like, how do we lift ourselves up and bring each other forward? Would you say that's one of your biggest achievements in your career?
Absolutely. I've been wanting, particularly since becoming a mum. I mean, I've always been a feminist in training. Don't get me wrong. Like, I hardly ever get it right all the time, but I've always cared. And then when I had my boys, the injustices that you would see, particularly as a career woman, my gap in pension, my lack of earnings, my part-time childcare costs, etc., etc. And I've always been kind of banging my fist on the table, trying to work out, okay, I don't like it, so how can I change it? How can I do something that's going to help? And then you look at people like Anna Whitehouse with the Flexapil. You look at the lady called Jo who launched Pregnant Then Screwed, and you think, well, these are incredible women who have found something that they can really pursue and make a difference. But for me, it's like, well, what can I do? And then when the women's domain, and it was definitely a team effort. It didn't all come from my brain or anything, but it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. And the more it's sort of snowballed and grown, the more potential I see for it. And it's just, I'm so excited for it. So absolutely, as from a professional point of view, it is absolutely the most my proudest thing, I think.
Oh, it's amazing. And I'm really looking forward to the white paper and the next event as well. What challenges have you encountered in your career? You've talked about a few in terms of, being a parent, being a woman, being, you are an immigrant as well. Your father was Persian, so you probably encountered some challenges there growing up. What are the challenges that you've encountered, and how have you overcome them? What tips can you give?
So I'd never consider myself an immigrant, only because I was born in Cornwall. And although my dad was this very big Persian personality, he led, a mixed life, but elements of real privilege. And it's not really until within the last 5 years I've really understood the kind of the trauma that my Iranian family have gone through in their lives, particularly my younger cousins who have a very Iranian names, look very Iranian, etc. Have been grown up in England, etc. And like kind of not even microaggressions, just horrendous stuff. And also that, when you're looking at the protests in Tehran and Iran recently, and seeing your country being portrayed on the news in such a way which is just completely alien to them. But so before I got married, my surname was Farman Farmai, so I always got called exotic, but in my ignorance, I was like, oh, that's not fine. That's fine. Oh, you must be Spanish or Italian, or you're so Mediterranean looking. And it never felt negative to me, which just goes to show that I can be so close to something and you barely are touched by it, whereas literally my cousin, who just has a different kind of name to me, suffered, so much. So, but yeah, I think as far as challenges goes, I never considered my ethnic or ethnicity or my Iranian heritage to ever be a challenge necessarily. If anything, people just couldn't say my name, which is fine, or spell it. Actually, it's actually the easiest name to spell. I definitely have a personality which gets called bossy quite a lot. And I always remember a quote from Beyonce, which is, I'm not bossy, I'm the boss, which I loved. But yeah, I think people, I get, not that I get told to be quiet or anything, but, I think I don't get that kind of respect necessarily that a male counterpart would get, because I get labelled, either you're being a bit aggressive or you're too bossy or things like that. And quite frankly, I think people just need to get over it and and just come at me.
There's a point where you just stop caring. I think it comes with maturity and just being comfortable with yourself. You are the boss. You're not being bossy. I love that.
And then definitely since having my boys, and don't get me wrong, #blessed and all that, love them to death. But being a mum was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, particularly being a mum to two. So when my second was born, that first year of his life was a very foggy time. So I was dealing with that in my personal life, and then still trying to find out who I was professionally, because now all of a sudden I'm part-time, so I'm not ambitious. Or Sarah's, she's got kids now. She's not going to want to go there. She's not got that ambition. She can't make that meeting. And then, if I want to work, I have to pay childcare costs, which I don't begrudge the nursery for, because they're amazing and they look after my boys brilliantly, and they need more money, but the government needs to subsidise it. Thank you very much. But then, so more women like me can comfortably go back into the workplace and not work at a loss, So I think for me, the motherhood penalty was very real. And also from a women's health perspective as well, like I definitely suffered. I wouldn't call it postnatal depression because I was never diagnosed, but there was definitely elements of real fog and down moments. And then feeling like you couldn't really show that weakness, even though it's not one. Because you didn't want to be, you just constantly felt you needed to overperform, and I guess that's always been a big challenge not to try and do.
I think you've resonated with a lot of women, even myself. I call it my personal and professional P&L has been at negative. I haven't even broken even yet since becoming a parent, and then you're a mother as well. There are all these things that you have to take into account. And the payback, you're still waiting for the payback because, it is what it is. Let's talk about the trailblazers in your life. Who inspires you? What relationships are important to you, and how do they add value to you as a woman in the e-commerce realm?
Particularly, I'm a member of a local theatre in Coventry, and I've been there, doing plays and working behind the bar and all that. And the set of friends that I had there were women who were actually 10 years older plus. These were, professors of diversity and, left-wing kind of brilliant feminists who just didn't take any shit from anybody. And they taught me so much. They taught me about confidence. They taught me to have confidence in my opinion, to, not not be a sheep, and community and solidarity and friendship. That female rivalry, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but my experience has always been an abundance of female friendships, which have given me nothing but positivity. So from that perspective, I just have the friendship groups that I have are all centered around really strong women. Some mothers, some not mothers, some career women, some not career women. Like it's not about that, but it's just that feeling of or knowledge of real friendship it's always been a real kept me going a lot, I think.
Yes, there's a saying that look around and your circle will tell you how far you progress in life. So it is important to have those connections that are empowering you, inspiring you, lifting you up, picking you up when you fall down. And that's interesting. Really, really good. So what does success look like to you in your personal and professional life? If I fast forward 5-10 years from now, what does success look like to Sarah?
So I would say that there's a point in my life in which my kids are a bit older, kind of, late teens, early 20s. And there's a real sense of freedom in our home, a real sense of my kids are raised right, they're happy, they're healthy, they've got great friendships and relationships, whether they know what they're going to, I just want to see my kids thrive. And from my point of view, and Tola, I think, I don't want to be that cliche, but I've definitely got a book or two in me. And I think that for me, I'm not going to be in this rat race my entire life. Success for me is definitely that sea air, a nice dog, copious amounts of coffee and maybe a little bit of wine, and that freedom to make my day the way I want it.
Yeah, so freedom doesn't come, financial freedom, yes, is one of the aspects. Actually, personal, say, your physical freedom, mentally having that freedom as well. That's what actually people are aspiring to. You always think 20 years ago, I want to achieve this, achieve that, earn this amount of money. And then you realize as you climb, oh, that's not actually what's making me happy. I realized that money was a big motivator, but now self-care, work-life balance, culture, values, the people who I surround myself with, how am I adding value? How am I contributing? How am I networking, meeting new people, learning from them? Those are sort of the goals and the intentions that I have now.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. Look, financial freedom is obviously a goal because, money does make the world go round and all that, but it's to a certain extent. But I think it's so much more than that. It's the kind of that exhale,
Yeah,
wake up in the morning and you can exhale.
definitely. We can't talk about, women in business and trailblazers without touching on self-care, because we have so many women out there who are not, putting some time and space in themselves. What does self-care mean to you, and what do you do for that?
Self-care is something that I've never really been that good at. But it's something as I creep towards 40 that I am trying to be better at. And so like health goals, for instance, I'm not a sporty person. And, I used to love dance and gymnastics and all of that growing up. But, as an adult, I could never go to the gym. I was never motivated enough to do that consistently. And the word consistently will come up again because, all these couch to 5K apps that you get, and I've tried doing them about 15 billion times and, always quit at week 4. And I think one night, possibly after half a bottle of wine.
You made a good decision. You made a good decision after a bottle of wine, yeah.
I basically said, I'm going to run a marathon because the only way I'm going to be consistent with running, and I knew that running for me was, I do enjoy it. I don't always enjoy it. It's horrendous usually, but there is that feeling of exhilaration when you finish a run that you're just so proud of yourself and the endorphins are going, and I've got to chase that feeling, but I need to be consistent with it. So I decided to run this marathon sort of beginning of autumn last year, and I've just been training for it ever since, and I did a half marathon a few weeks ago. But running is very much a massive thing for self-care for me because it's that freedom that I get, whether it's half an hour or 3 hours out on my own, listening to a podcast, listening to an Audible, story, whatever, and having that time to myself is really important. And then actually recognizing, for me, self-care isn't just about, putting a face mask on and having a bubble bath, although it can be, and it sometimes is. It's understanding what makes you happy. And I've had this conversation with my husband. I said, what do you think? When am I my most happy, do you think? And he said, when we're at home on a Sunday, you are in the kitchen and you're cooking your roast dinner, which is like a big epic kind of adventure for me. I love it. And you're listening, to music or, a radio show like Just a Minute or something. And he goes, yeah, and about 2 o'clock when you open a bottle of wine. But, but that idea that I'm in my kitchen, I'm pottering and I'm listening and I'm in my own world. And he goes, that's when, for me, as a day-to-day happy, that's when you're most happy. So I'm like, well, I need to make more space in my life to do that. So that's why my long runs are on a Sunday morning. And if I go out and run miles and miles in the morning, I've earned that roast dinner, you know? So it's recognizing what makes you happy and making sure you put space in your life to do that.
That is true. I think investing in your physical and mental health is really important. And whether it's running, the gym, you're so right. We're never motivated. I'm never motivated to go to the gym. I'm just disciplined enough to know if I keep on doing it, it'll improve the way I feel. I'll start the day right. I'll be better for myself, for my body, for the people who I work with. And it's just that consistency, motivation. I mean, maybe it's the roast at the end or the that, but that's really good, really, really good.
It's not always a bottle, Antola, just so you know.
I know. Just for the audience out there, when we say we open a bottle of wine, it's a glass or two.
Glass or two, honestly.
But also, Sarah, why should we care what other people think? You know, what happens to us. But let's talk about networking. So, as a trailblazer, how do you engage, connect, and expand your network? Obviously, we've talked about the women's domain, but you know, what else could you do to network?
But the women's domain has been a massive resource for me. Actually, I wouldn't have met the people that I, you know, like yourself and so many other amazing people without it. What else do? I go to a lot, you know, I put myself out there as much as I can. Networking's a funny thing because I can't always go to London and network for 2 hours in the evening. You know, I have,
isn't it so annoying that it's always in London?
Yeah, and it's always drinks, and it's always, you know, and I think, and I get it, you know, I do enjoy it if I can go, but I have responsibilities, you know, and I can't justify disappearing to London 3 times a week. So, but it's really understanding which ones you really need to be at and making sure then that the people you do connect with, you keep in touch. So LinkedIn has been a huge resource for me. Sounds obvious, I know, but people are so willing to connect and have a conversation. The amazing women in e-commerce community that Yotpo have launched, I think that's an extraordinary space for women from all walks of life in all different roles, and you know, I've made some great connections through there as well. But yeah, I think you do have to be brave. I think you have to remember that you're not the only person in the room that feels a little bit stupid and a little bit shy and, you know, doesn't know anyone. But you don't have to go to everything. I think sometimes less is more, and it's quality over quantity.
Definitely. I think with networking, why people are afraid as well, sometimes there's a cost. So these events, money, it's also your time. But even if you say, right, I'm going to commit to go to one event, it happens every 6 months or once a year, it's free and I can leverage those connections. That is much better than just, you know, pimping yourself to every networking event that is out there, for sure. Touring. Do you have a mentor? Or
I don't have a mentor, not an official one, you know. I think we've said before, you know, I'm definitely on the look for one. I'm on like a mentoring Tinder, swipe left, swipe right kind of thing. I think it's really understanding what I want from a mentor before I approach people. Because like, can you mentor me? It's like, yeah, how? I don't know. You just talk me off the edge of a cliff every few minutes. That's fine. But I think, you know, we have a mentoring scheme at 5/8. It's been really successful. I see the benefits of mentoring through colleagues and friends. So yeah, I'd absolutely love to be a mentor. You know, I'll be very willing to if I could help someone. And I'm open to being mentored. But I just haven't gone on that little dating journey, and I think there's an element of intimidation maybe, but I think it comes down to understanding what I really want to get out of a mentoring relationship. But I think this past 12 months with the women's domain, I've met so many incredible women like yourself. You're still, it's fine. I don't have to rush it. It's fine.
No, the biggest lesson is we're all still navigating life and our career journey. I think if there's one takeaway, and I hope to explore this more with this podcast, is everyone starts off at one end in their career, but they have, progression isn't linear, as they say. There's so many ebbs and flows, ups and downs. And it's the same with a mentor. The things I probably would want from a mentor, I don't have one 10 years ago, and what I need now are completely different. So it's number one thing is defining what is it you want to get out of it.
Yeah. And you don't need just one either.
Yeah, exactly. So we're almost coming to the end of the podcast. And if we were to just summarize, what are the 3 key Trailblazer takeaways you want to share with the audience?
Get in the driving seat. Don't ask for permission. If you want something, you've got to go and get it, and you've got to get in the driving seat. Can't wait for people to offer you stuff, because they're not always not everyone sees you for what you want them to see, so get in the driving seat. And I think you mentioned earlier about being curious, and I think that's such a good tip, because always be curious, even if you don't think it directly impacts your day, to understand the workings of the business that you're in, from an industry and just on a company level, is really key, because that leads you to so many different opportunities and routes of knowledge that you just wouldn't have reached out for. And I think have fun. Life is too short. If you are not enjoying what you're doing, change it. Because I wouldn't have got through half my life without laughing. I love it. You've got to have fun. Don't take yourself too seriously in that way. Understand that you're learning and mistakes happen, but it's what you do with those mistakes that count.
That is so true. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time to actually speak to me. This has been such an inspiration. You're an inspiration in your career journey, in what you're doing right now, and starting the women's domain is going to help so many women, and you do not know how appreciated this is. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you that's very kind. But yeah, I wish you all the best with the podcast. It's going to be awesome.
Wow, that was one amazing podcast, don't you think? If you enjoy what you heard and were just as inspired as I was by our guest, please share on all your socials. Remember to follow, subscribe, and like this channel. See you next time. I've been your host, Intola, on the Trailblazers Experience podcast. See you next time.